you're building your company out, you put a lot of stories out there in terms of how you're building it, in terms of like your struggles, what are some of the challenges that you're facing, how are you going about problem solving, to understand even the psychographic factors of your target audience in terms of like what is their thought process, what are some of their pain points, where are they coming.
The LaunchCast is back with yet another episode. In today's episode, we have Rishabh, the founder of WhitePath. Through WhitePath, Rishabh is helping many other startups finding sweet spot in their digital marketing game. This episode is filled with his perspective, his journey, and his experience while working in startups and helping other startups grow. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the episode of the LaunchCast, the podcast where you get every answer for your startup. On today's episode, we have Rishabh, the guy who started a marketing agency in Bangalore. In this episode, we will be covering every topics and going to the specifics of marketing with him. Let's hear his story. Hello, sir.
Hi Shay. Thanks for having me on this podcast. It's a pleasure talking with you. So yeah, first to start off with, I think if I have to give a brief introduction about myself, I did my undergrad at Christ, graduated, was right at when the COVID first wave struck. So I think like during my college days, I'd done a couple of internships. One was at a startup and one was at Swiggy as well. So that kind of gave me a clear idea in terms of like a corporate versus a startup, and that inclined my interest towards the startup space, and I was very clear that I wanted to work at the startup space because of the exposure that it gave, because of the learning, because of the more freedom that you could try new things, etc. And basis of that, like say then right after college, I started working for an edtech startup, was one of the early employees there, then helped them scale them from a 0 to 20,000 users. Then post that, they actually pivoted into a marketing agency model as well as another business where I was one of the first employees, and that actually picked on pretty well to become a team of 15. Then there I was a marketing manager, managing a team of almost 5 to 7. There I had pretty much done worked for over 30 plus brands, handled marketing budgets of over 4 crores, and had pretty much done things across the board with respect to the digital marketing purview, like performance marketing, SEO, email marketing, then conversion rate optimization, a bit of Amazon marketing. So I had pretty much covered a purview. So basis of this, I think like I had a lot of inclination towards performance marketing as a sector. That's kind of what interested me a lot more, because I felt it was the right combination of what I loved in terms of like analytics plus creativity plus trying new stuff out, right? In terms of like just being very tech driven as well. Because performance marketing, there's a lot of tech driven in terms of tracking, setup, etc. So it was the right combination for me that I fell in love with, and that's where like say then over the next few years I did like a bunch of courses, would have done over 50-60 courses on myself, like that helped me delve deeper into the aspects. And of course, right, I think I didn't focus performance marketing completely as a learning subjects, because you need to get into the fundamentals of marketing, principles of marketing as well, some of which I had picked up because I had done my business graduation. But of course, other aspects of principles and fundamentals I had to delve deep into, because those will trickle down when you're applying these and formulating the strategies. Then a year and a half back is when I decided, okay, fine, I am pretty confident. So I ventured out and started my own startup, WhitePath, where we currently help early stage startups in their 0 to 1 journey, or they've figured out the 0 to 1, have some signs of product market fit. We help them scale up from 1 to 5 scale, right? So we have clients across sectors like edtech, fintech, e-commerce, SaaS, some of the local business chains, where we help them mainly in terms of scaling up using digital channels. So I think that's just a brief introduction about myself.
Okay. So many questions. The first thing I would like to know is that, okay, you did your graduation in the business, right?
Yeah.
You did it. Now, going in the industry, does the graduation in business help, or you need to learn it on your own? Because I feel that somewhere being an engineering student, the things we are taught and the things which are into the industry are pretty different.
Yeah.
Right. So what is your perspective on that?
So what I'm exactly doing right now was not even taught in college. It's all something that I self-learned post during the college. I didn't do any specific formal education for that, I would say. But the business graduation that I did helped me understand how businesses worked, get me a business acumen and perspective. So that kind of helped me merge marketing plus business background to achieve better results. Now I can think of marketing from a business context, from a business point of view, can break down financials more easily, can break down the numbers more easily in terms of how a business is trying to achieve scale, what are the unit economics, and what are the different operational factors that will come into the play. So now I can think more holistically, which is what helped me in terms of getting a better edge, I would say. But it's not a must that this thing, because things can of course at the end of the day be learned as well, but this business education background kind of helped me uh, get a better edge when I delved into this thing marketing field. But yeah.
Yeah. Starting marketing, digitally.
Yeah.
Now, what if a founder is starting up? He doesn't have funds, but I want to market my startup.
Yeah.
Then what are the ways to do that? Right?
Yeah.
Assuming that, okay, I'm starting a fintech company. Now,
Yeah.
fintech is something which requires funds,
Yeah.
but I don't have funds, but I want to market it.
Yeah.
How should I go about it?
So I think first steps is when you have an idea is to have a product in place where you build an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. So which is where you have like a very basic version of your product to test it out, right? That's like the first basis when you have an idea to have the product ready. And this product as well, where you build it based on a lot of feedback from your circle, who your target market is, speak to them, understand what their pain points are, how you can solve them, and build it based on that. That's like the first iteration to be ready. So once you have the MVP ready, next is how do you get the audience to try it out. First ways is of course like market it to your own network, friends, family network, best way to get like the head start. Second way is building your own content, right? One is building a personal brand in terms of like it can be through LinkedIn or whether you build your own distribution channels. This personal brand helps you get those initial set of customers as well, because your audience know you well. So when there's something that you have tried out, they want to get a taste of it, try it out. So that's one way. And third point is of course lead generate, like content creation. So you need to create content out there about your product, what pain points it solves, then like say why people should try it out, what are some of its USPs which other products might not have, right? So this will help generate interest for your product, and this is a slow process as well, right? It's not like overnight you will gather a huge audience out of it, but this actually the aspect of content creation should start from the time when when you have the idea itself, when you have like a concrete idea in terms of some clarity in terms of the direction that you should take from then itself. Because if you're starting marketing too late as well, it's when like you have the product and from that time to pick it up, it's going to take again time. So marketing should start from like a zero itself, and then consider that at very initial stages instead of thinking that I'll build the product first and let marketing come later. So that's one of like realizations that I've come into. And yeah, of course, like another latest thing is building in public, right? Like when you're building your company out, you put a lot of stories out there in terms of how you're building it, in terms of like your struggles, what are some of the challenges that you're facing, how are you going about problem solving, what is your vision and thought behind solving it. So when you put out all this out in the public, this also helps people connect with you on a personal level, and then it kind of helps generate interest as well to them about your product. Out of curiosity, many people would want to just try it out because they have been following your journey. So those are some ways that I feel are just a best initial ways of generating good marketing traction initially. And of course, right, when you feel you've figured out the sweet spot, then it's about amplification. How can you put in more money to amplify this at a very larger scale? So that's how I would look at marketing for a very early stage startups.
Okay, so it always starts with personal branding. I feel that, okay, once you are building in public, there's a personal brand, and the founders who don't have a personal brand don't have that head start, right? That's what you are trying to say.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like to an extent, it's very lately in terms of just personal brand has turned out to be like a very great marketing acquisition channel for very huge brands, right? So when you see a Bombay shaving company, they have their own podcast. Many other brands have started their own podcasts itself. The founders where they're speaking out to many other founders of very other interesting folks in their niche has actually turned out to be like a very great acquisition channels for some of the brands. So that's one of the ways I believe is just one of the marketing channels that has been working well lately.
Nikhil Kamath started his own podcast, right? You must have seen.
Yeah, I think his perspective, at least like when I look at his podcast, it's more from the point where they want to get the value addition to the audience out there rather than monetizing or from his personal brand. Of course, who doesn't know Nikhil Kamath? He is one of the most renowned entrepreneurs, but it's more from the point I believe like he wanted to get. And yeah, I actually find their podcasts very interesting in terms of delving very deep into some of the mindsets of biggest entrepreneurs, some of the insights and the thought processes behind why they do certain things, which was very interesting. I mean,
The thing they do is that they dive into one industry, right?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is e-commerce?
Yeah.
Then they would just sit there with an book writer, with some Misho founder and
Yeah.
Flipkart founder. They would just discuss, okay, how is e-commerce in India?
Yeah.
Which would again come to many tangents, and slowly it would be a 2 hour long podcast.
Yeah.
Now again, starting a startup in your journey,
Yeah.
like what you have figured out, that what are the few mistakes which 0 to 1 founders do while marketing their startups?
So yeah, I think like some of the just mistakes founders do is you need to constantly keep talking to your customers, be very customer driven, be very customer obsessed to understand what exactly their thought process is going behind, because many times you'll realize after building the product that they might not actually need your this thing, they might not use it. So only when you speak to them closely, you'll understand in terms of what are the trigger points that will get them to use your product. And yeah, like even this whole process of customer interviews, etc., is something you'll have to give a lot of thought behind, because there are many customers you'll speak to who won't realize that they're actually facing that problem. So that's where you'll have to nitpick their brain, understand their thought process, actually give them this thing that ask them if they're facing that particular problem, and see if whether this certain problem has to be solved also. Every problem does not actually have to be solved. So need to see whether it's a pain point which needs a very robust solution or not. So that's one of the things in terms of what founders have to focus on. Then other mistakes might be in terms of be very focus on your business fundamentals and your core business model rather than focusing like on vanity metrics, right? So vanity metrics essentially means on metrics which has no value at all in the real sense. So some of it might be in terms of just you telling views, you telling app installs, you telling sign-ups, leads, etc. But what aspect of that is real value is where like you want to actually look at engagement rate, which is real signs of people liking your product. Then instead of leads, you want to look at qualified leads, where it shows what exactly the right customer coming to your business, inside your business, or showing interest towards your product. So look at business fundamentals and business proper business metrics, so that you don't get carried away by other vanity metrics, because vanity metrics at the end of the day is very pleasing, gives you the illusion that okay fine, things are working out, but it's ultimately you need to decide on what are the core fundamental business metrics that you want to optimize towards. And even if it's going to take time, even if it's going to take a lot of iterations, etc., you want to have the clarity that you want to achieve these business metrics, and not other metrics are good to have, but it's not the business success factor that would help you grow. So yeah,
I would like to add one point here, that you said customer interviewing, right?
yeah,
Now, one thing which I learned and I read in few books, that was while interviewing customers, sometimes the customer might give you a review, right? Let's say they told that I want this feature, but when you actually release that feature, they won't use it. The thing is that customer also don't know that what they want. So the also one another way to do is that, okay, you launched your MVP, now give it to customers and iterate fast. Every week hold a meeting that, okay, are they using? Just see the matter. No, iterate. Are they using now? Yes, keep this feature, now move on to another feature, right? I think that would be a good way to interact with your consumers, because consumers can't identify their problems, and maybe when they identify it might not be true when executing them.
Yeah, in general, speed of iterations is very important in startups. When you're starting out, you have very vague idea in terms of like, okay, fine, this is my vision, like this is what I want to build. Sometimes many startups completely pivot into something different because of the insights that they got out of the first set of iterations, first set of interactions that they've got with their customers. So that's where speed of iterations and speed of, like, say, just reflecting in terms of what are some of the directions that you need to take is what will help you find the sweet spot very quicker. So
Yeah. Then how to find your target audience? Right? We are talking that, okay, we should interview the customers, we should iterate for the customers, but who is the customer? How do we iterate? Because I think that many a times the consumer base which we assume as founders or the founder assumes is not true, right? We have a classic example of Horlicks coming to India, right? I always say the example. They targeted the adults. Cadbury also, right? Cadbury targeted, I guess, children, but then again, due to their ads, and they marketed in such a certain way that Cadbury is now given to boyfriends, give to their girlfriends, whether it's just chocolate.
correct.
Then how do you actually identify your consumer base?
Yeah, I think like one is, when you look at targeting, you need to go beyond demographic targeting, right? So one is demographic in terms of you defining what is the gender, what is your age group, what are the locations they're at, what is the income level. These are some demographic factors. You need to go beyond that to understand even the psychographic factors of your target audience in terms of like what is their thought process, what are some of their pain points, where are they coming from, then why would they use a certain product, or how will they solve certain problems. These are some of the factors that you need to look into a psychographic level as well, that will help you understand your customers at a much deeper level. So that sort of segmenting has to be done. And how to find the right audiences is based on just your thought process and your just hypothesis of, like, say, hey, this audience set can be my target audience. Let's try to experiment to that audience and see what the engagement is. Because in marketing, again, I look at it very experiment driven. I look at it like how a scientist looks at his own experiment, right? Like, he does not know the exact solution, but he has like a hypothesis in his mind. He'll test it out. He'll see whether that hypothesis worked or not. If it worked, then the hypothesis is an successful experiment. Then if it doesn't, he'll iterate on that to see what are the variables that might have caused it to fail, iterate on the next hypothesis. So I personally look at marketing very experiment driven and very hypothesis set driven, so that you get to know what is working, what is not, and if something doesn't work, find out what can be the reasons that it's not working and iterate on it. So
This was not the end of your episode. We will be back again with another part with Rishabh. We will dive more into the technicalities of marketing, and this would be packed with knowledge. Keep watching the LaunchCast. This episode was made by Rohak Mansukhani and Trailblazing.